This is Randall Thiel. I'm with the DFW chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Today I have with me Seth Andrews from the Thinking Atheist podcast. It's about to have its 500th episode. Seth, with all those episodes under your belt, you've been doing this quite a while. What do you notice as you've been going around the country speaking to different groups? Do you see any trends forming in the secular community?
Well, I mean, we're definitely seeing the rise of the non-religious. We're seeing the numbers bearing that out. Not necessarily atheist, but people who live their lives without religion really having much to do with it. They don't need it. They don't rely on it. They certainly aren't out there preaching it. And so, we're seeing that reflected in even highly religious areas. When I did a tour of the Deep South, we saw packed houses. Many of them couldn't tell their families or their employers they were coming. But, the rise of the non-believer is a real thing. And that is only, I think, going to continue to increase. We've seen some splintering as the movement grows. There have been growing pains. We've seen our share of bad news and bad agents and a few scandals here and there, and some people get discouraged and they think, well, does this mean the entire thing is infected? Is it all for naught? Is it all corrupt or whatever? And the truth is, it just means that our movement is made up of people, and we have very good ones and some not good ones, and we have to root them out. But it doesn't mean that the cause isn't worth it, and that what we're doing isn't working, and that we should just throw our hands in the air and surrender to the superstitious agencies out there. I think, it's never been more critical to stand up against, especially the organized, religious, theocratic, right-wing movements in this country. And who's going to do it if we as atheist activists do not, if we as humanists do not? And so, I've seen growing pains. I've seen some politics, strong personalities clashing against each other, but I've also seen a lot of humanist and atheist activism that's working and that's attracting people from across their region and beyond. And so, I think what we do continues to be necessary, and the movement will continue to evolve and grow, and we'll have to address the challenges and opportunities as they approach us.
Simultaneously to your career, we've seen, if not a growth in evangelicalism, at least an intensification. How do you see that manifesting and playing itself out?
Well, we're seeing a lot of people who are falling away from religious belief, but we're also seeing a sort of a doubling down by the fundamentalists, the theocrats, the hardcore evangelical crowd, who is, you can see the panic in their faces, you can hear the panic in their voices as they realize their grasp on the majority is over, or it will soon be over. And the idea that they no longer control the conversation, they no longer have a monopoly on what it means to be patriotic or to be an American or to be a citizen of the world, a proper, good, moral, right, upstanding citizen who has joy and purpose and goodness. They've been selling this notion that you have to be a member of their tribe to be good and to have good. And they're faced with the overwhelming avalanche of evidence that says, well, that's crazy. It's not true. And they're obviously, you can hear the panic in their voices. The preachers on television and the John Hagees pounding at their pulpits, and the Franklin Grahams and all those people who were up at Paula White's and who were up in the White House. They are, they're talking more and more at this sort of high-pitched, frantic pace, and I think it's because they realize that they no longer own the narrative. This is a healthy thing, but it also means, like a wounded animal, they're going to be much more dangerous in many respects, and we have to continue to be vigilant to fight them, the damage they do, the lies they're telling, the corruption they're fostering, and to continue to remind other people that you do not have to look like them or worship like them to be good, or to be a part of this country, or to be part of a moral humanity.
Well, I agree with you on this, but sometimes I feel like we're wounded animals too, because we're one heartbeat away on the Supreme Court from having an insurmountable majority. the FRF point of view, sometimes it looks a little scary out there that laws are going to get changed. We're seeing these crazy abortion laws happening in southern states that may take years to get reversed.
Yeah, and this is some of the danger I think that I refer to. I mean, it doesn't mean that theocrats don't have power or that they're not scrambling to try to fortify their positions while the zeitgeist changes out here, right? When we see the abortion law, this draconian abortion law happen in Alabama, it happens because they're terrified of the cultural change that's happening throughout most of the United States, and which will eventually, not tomorrow, but eventually come to Alabama. Alabama is going to evolve out of bad ideas. So yeah, there's a scrambling right now to try to put the puzzle pieces in place so that they retain power or rob rights of other human beings who are not like them or who do not worship or live like them. And that's very real, and it's discouraging. I was talking to Monica Miller at the American Humanist Association, and she does a lot of these legal battles on the front lines. And we were talking about how it is discouraging, and there is a lot of damage being done in a very short amount of time, and it's disheartening. But I don't think it means we surrender. I don't think it means we give up. I think it just means we have to continue to kick the tires and go out and do battle against bad ideas in the effort to replace them with better ones. So.
All the polling is showing that this movement of growth of nons is certainly coming from young people. So that automatically is creating a dynamic where young people are in conflict with older generations. Do you have any recommendations for maybe a young college-age person that's having to deal with religious people within their families that may not be very accepting of their secular ideas?
We see a lot of people, I mean, not just young people, but it's certainly true. You break the mold and you declare, well, I'm not going to be an echo of my familial voice. My mother and father have their opinions, but it doesn't mean that I have to be like them. That's hard for some families, and there's a lot of sort of emotional blackmail, sometimes financial blackmail that happens within families to keep their kids acting like them, act like this, live like this, work like this, vote like this, love like this, worship like this, or else. And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to control what your family does. All you can do really is control your own attitudes. And life's too short to live somebody else's life, to speak in somebody else's voice, to simply be an echo. You have a voice of your own. You are a unique individual, and you deserve the right to pursue truth on your own terms. And understand if somebody comes after you and in your family or elsewhere tries to control who you are, that is a form of blackmail. And you should see it for what it is. See it exposed for what it is. And once you see it as sort of blackmail, you can realize how toxic it is and then decide that you're going to draw the boundary in your own life. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see a lot of young people, 30 and unders, especially. They are less plugged into religion. There's a little bit of frustration because there's a little bit of apatheism. They're not plugged into religion, but they're also not plugged into the battles against the theocracy because they haven't really, many of them have not really been affected by it. So that's a double-edged sword. But largely, I think the less superstitious people we have on this planet, the better planet we're probably going to have.
I saw a case was settled this summer. I'm not sure you were familiar with it, but a young lady sued her old high school because they discriminated against her because she came out as an atheist. And her name was Sydney Fisk. She's now a college student in Colorado, and she won a settlement, and that they can't disclose the amount of it. But basically, because she became an atheist advocate, they dropped her grades, they rescinded letters of recommendation, a lot of things, and she was very successful in that venture. Do you think cases like that are going to be heartening young people out there to realize that they can stand up on their own?
I'm not familiar with the case. I'd be curious, is it a private school or a public school?
It's a public school.
I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it's, we've seen the prayers at public schools, and we've seen the religious teachers who come in and slide their agenda into an otherwise science-y course. That's really extreme. there's this lie that people are resisting more and more, that you have to, that you can't be good without God, or that you have to be a Christian to be a good citizen, or a good student, or a good employee, or a good whatever. And we're seeing that fall away. As the culture changes, I think those instances will become less and less, fewer and fewer. They'll always be there, and I think we have to be an advocate for those young people who are discriminated against, anybody discriminated against because of who they are, what they think. But it's a crazy, problematic world. It's still a very superstitious world. I mean, I find myself fighting discouragement sometimes, sometimes, once you're out of the matrix, you realize how fake it all is. And then you become frustrated. And you're like, why doesn't everybody else see this? But I have to remember that I was deluded in my belief for 30 years. I couldn't see the rest of the world, and it's a slow process. I've likened it to coming out of a coma. In the movies, somebody comes out of a coma and they pop out of the hospital bed and they go rescue the girl and save the day. And in real life, it takes a long time to gradually come out of a coma into consciousness. And I think that's a lot of how coming out of superstitious belief is as a culture. This is a slow, sort of an awakening. And we're going to have to become a lot more awake, I think, here in this world before those problems go away, or at least are hugely diminished.
Well, we've seen a lot of the division that the country is going through with the recent impeachment process. Do you see any positive signs coming out of our leaders in Washington that for secular people to cling on to?
It's hard. I'm an atheist activist, but I'm a liberal, and I'm not a liberal because I decided I was a liberal. I used to be a Fox News conservative. But when I came out of superstition, I had to go back and reevaluate the stuff in my life that related to the humanist in me. And so when I got into things like the death penalty and LGBTQ rights and the right of a woman to choose and all of these other things, the role of governments, is healthcare a privilege or a right, all these questions, I found myself I ended up in the liberal column as a result of what my values were. And when I see the deep divide in the country now, I'm tremendously disheartened. We have a philosophical divide. We are tribal to the extreme. I think we've vilified each other. I'm not saying both sides are equally good or bad. I think liberal values are superior values, but we've become so tribal. We've become so used to hating and insulting each other on Twitter that no one's really talking to each other. I think that we're going to be a long time recovering from this particular period in American history. And I know I know that those wounds can heal, and it's my hope that they will eventually heal, but it's going to be a long process, and we're going to have to be participants in that process.
Well, I know that in my particular story, like you, I found my atheism later in my life. And also I was a Fox News, Rush Limbaugh listening conservative.
Michael Savage.
Oh yeah, the whole bit. And then when I realized I don't believe in the same God they believe, I felt like I couldn't count on my tribe anymore. Thank you so much for being a part of this today. We're always glad when you come to town, and we'll definitely want to hook up with you again on this.
It's an honor, man. It's good to meet some free thinkers in Texas.
Yes, thank you.
A few of us.
I tend to blather on, so just
That's
stop.
what we were hoping for, so that helps.
What happens when you ask a radio host to answer a question and you might as well have a seat? I'm just one guy. I'm no expert. Like I say in my show, I'm an everyman, like anybody else. I do a lot of this kind of stuff, and I get to see and hear a lot, but it's, I think we're all doing the best we can. I want to encourage people,
Yeah.
It's okay to doubt, it's okay to be critical and skeptical, it's okay to live your own life, and it's okay to do your own thinking. It's,
We're
a,
still
it's, an
very
exciting time.
disjointed.
It's an exciting time.
Yeah.
It's also extremely difficult, but it's an exciting time. I think we're in the middle of a sea change in this country, and we're part of it. And I think the next decade, we're going to see decade and a half, a transformation of this country into a much more secular place. The theocrats will not go quietly.
Yes.
But they're going.
They will not.
They are going, and I think we're a part of that. So.
Yeah. Now they want to act like they are the champions of civil rights when they were the ones that were way behind on that. 30 years from now, they will be the ones claiming that they ended discrimination against LGBT community when we know that they were the ones that are holding that back. That's my little bit of a editorial on what
He's
we're
on
facing.
record. If it happens, you call him up.
You
get
wait.
what I find.
You wait and see.